I've written from home for the last 5 years full time, but I've been thinking about how I loved writing more after I'd gone to a job for a whole day, then had to come home semi-exhausted and try and find energy from nowhere to write. And usually I wouldn't go straight home, but I'd go to the train tracks and sit there for hours and it felt incredible. Or I'd go to the cemetery middle of the day, still wearing a suit like a lost member of a funeral. But that feeling of I'd be at work, I'd be checking sunset and sundown times on the internet when the moon rose, and I'd be doing that in secret between doing the work that I was supposed to do. And there was this anticipation for a whole day of having to wait somewhere where I didn't want to be, to then eventually go and sit by the train tracks at night and read poems and write. And now that's on tap, and so it's not as it's just too easy. I'm sitting here in a park today, and it doesn't feel as magical as when I used to have to go through all those crappy jobs and then have that at the end of the tunnel. It just felt incredible, and I'll go back and visit the train tracks at some point. I did a few years ago, but it lost the magic because I didn't have that weird sense of struggle. I've got different struggles now, but without the struggle, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, and that's kind of insane. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, so writing the book that I've just finished, I wrote a few pieces about that and how it felt transcendent when I sat by the train tracks at night after work, and it was, yeah, and I miss that, and I can recreate it with words, but it's like writing about the past is like, I thought about this before, is like putting a balloon through the keyhole of a locked door and then blowing it up from the other side to feel a presence in a room that you actually don't have access to. And so it feels all a bit of hot air, and I can't touch it. I can't touch the other side. And there's something. It was different when I was sitting there and writing about it. But I've got the craft skills now to write about it, which I didn't have then. I had some, but I was developing them. But I had the source material of actually being there and the feeling of it. And so remembering those feelings can be really, it's hard. So there's always trade-offs. There's experiencing life when I didn't have the craft, and now there's living less life, but now I've got the craft. And it'll all be circular. At some point, I'll head back out into the world. I realised there's no way I can really truly write. I'm working on a fourth book at the moment after I've handed this in, and I've got an idea for it, but it feels like falling back on all the skills that I've learned for writing the 3 books I've written for a traditional publisher, and I think I've got a feeling that it'll still be really useful and really good to write more stuff that's kind of memoir-y, interesting. I'll have to live more life. I've noticed that. I've been looking at authors who've wrote poetry in their 20s and 30s, and they get caught in this repetitive loop where they've run out of material pretty quick, and they go from becoming poets to brands, which isn't a bad thing. What I love about a lot of young poets is you can really feel their voice, whereas the more crafted MFA, PhD style poets, I feel no voice. All I hear is beautiful craft. It feels like reading something that's looking over my shoulder, and reading it, I feel like I deserve a prize. I deserve a trophy, but I haven't earned a friend. And that's what I love about the younger poets who don't have the craft, but they don't need it. They've got a voice, so it feels like you end up with a friend in a book, not a trophy, which is a lot of the literary establishment rewards trophy writing. It doesn't give a crap about a book that could be a friend. And that was what I was trying to do, that I only realize now with You're Gonna Be Okay and the new one that I've just finished. I wanted it to be the voice and had to be stronger than the craft. I feel like there's a trade-off between craft and voice. And the younger poets haven't let craft get in the way of voice yet. And they're the most useful books. They're the books that can get someone through absolute darkness, I think. And of course it's all personal taste and all that sort of stuff. But I don't want to be impressed by a poem or moved by a poem. I want to feel words that could be a friend that you could carry in a bag, and you've got an instant friend in a book. And they're the ones that have helped me, not the clever writing. It's the stuff that feels like there's a voice here and it's saying true things, and enough of those true things, and I'm going to buy every single book they have. And I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. I knew that that's what I loved. What I got out of books was friendship. Not like, oh, that's impressive. Like, there's a lot of books I bought books that have won all the gold stars and the elephant stamps on their front covers, and they're beautiful to read, but I'll rarely read them more than twice. Most poetry books I'll read at least twice, but yeah, eventually they just gather dust. I don't care about them. A lot of award-winning poets, they're designed to sit on bookshelves, not in people's bags. That's the kind of poetry that isn't useful to me. I want to write books that sit in people's bags. They're the ones that help me. And of course, I'm reading reviews of You're Gonna Be Okay just to see how it's going. And one of them the other day said, this Darby person's pretty good, but it's the problem that I have with all Instagram poetry is, like, it lacks craft, it lacks compression, and you can tell Darby has some talent for a good line, but it's just Instagram poetry, and that I love that, because for me the best Instagram poetry, when it's really working, does become a friend, and the best craft poetry is to be placed behind a glass case and admired. And yeah, and I feel like, yeah, I did that. I went through the whole, I wrote poetry to try and make it sound literary to begin with, and then that bored me really quickly. And I was able to do it, getting into Best Australian Poems twice and a finalist for the Newcastle Poetry Award, which, yeah, I felt like a fluke at the time. My poems were next to all these professors and PhD poets, and after that I thought, okay, I've proven something to myself. I don't need to do this. I can write what I consider Instagram poetry again. Go back to the pure form of what I loved in the first place. But anyway, it's exciting that I've finished this new book that's going to be out May next year. It's going to be called Day Job Night Magic. It was about really struggling through the day to get to the night to make art or magic or something beautiful. And it's almost part advice. It's not really advice. It's really it's kind of poetry. It's kind of not. It's kind of how I got through the days to get to the night for 30 years, so I could write to an audience of no one and enjoy myself doing that. Yeah, and it's out in May next year, which is amazing. 12 months away. So I've got, I'm starting to write new stuff now, and see where it goes. yeah, if you'd like to leave a review for this on Spotify or Apple or a comment on YouTube, I'd love it.